during the storm. The surge itself, authorities warned of what could be a 10 to 15-foot storm surge, sending water rushing into parts of Naples. During the storm, the surge itself, a 10 to 15-foot storm surge into parts of Naples during the storm.
It was harrowing here for the people of Naples, for the thousands in shelters here in Collier County, and it was devastating from the moment it hit. First making landfall in the Keys, then the wind gusts in Miami topping 100 miles per hour. So let's turn back to our senior national correspondent Matt Gutman on this difficult day for Florida.
Hurricane Irma devouring Florida tonight. The storm making its first U.S. landfall at Cudjoe Key in the lower Florida Keys at 9:10 a.m. These storm chasers clocking speeds at 117 miles per hour. The actual speed may have been higher. Just before 10 a.m., a 94 mile per hour wind gust in Miami. Those gusts even stronger at the top of skyscrapers, snapping that crane and ripping off the roof of this apartment building. On the streets below, more than 5 feet of storm surge swamping downtown Miami.
As the minutes pass, the flooding keeps getting worse because the rain does not stop.
The hurricane spawning at least 3 reported tornadoes, multiple homes damaged in this neighborhood near Melbourne, Florida.
Mine's still standing. Mine's still standing, but there's a lot of water coming in now.
That metal wrapped around that mailbox, the wind firing splinters, spearing into the sides of homes. And officials say the biggest danger, that storm surge.
It's just after 2:20. We just received an urgent alert on our phone, like everybody else in Naples, that the storm surge is coming. The water has gone out towards the Gulf of Mexico, and officials say it is going to come back in with ferocity.
The storm making its second landfall at 3:35 p.m. at Marco Island, now heading towards Tampa.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And well, we're about to get punched in the face.
David, and it seems like an industrial-sized blender took the tops of the trees off here, grinding everything down. And right now we've switched position because the storm has come around to the other side. And this is the most dangerous time for folks here in Naples. They've come out during the eye of the storm to check on their cars, walk their dogs. But now is the most dangerous time because that storm surge is coming in, and officials are warning us it is dangerous out here. David.
You are absolutely right, Matt. Authorities all weekend long have said don't be fooled by the storm when it goes through. There is a calm afterward. We all just witnessed it here. But as you can see behind me tonight, the skies have suddenly darkened. The winds are picking up again, and the trees are already blowing in these heavy winds, now making their return. So let's get right to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z. She's back at the weather wall in New York, tracking the storm for us. Ginger, where's Irma now? Where's the hurricane headed?
Well, you're right there on that back of the eye wall, and so I want to take you through the rest of this radar. We already saw that 142 mile per hour gust in Naples, but there's an extreme wind warning that looks like it just may have dropped, but that was for 115 plus mile per hour winds, a tornado watch that extends, and multiple tornado warnings, all just east of Orlando, north of Vero Beach. We take you through that track, and this has been the all-important cone of uncertainty throughout the last couple of days. Well, now it is much more narrow and includes Tampa overnight tonight as a Category 1. It moves up to the Florida State-Georgia line right there around Tallahassee and then gets sucked up into kind of a low-pressure system and becomes more of just a rainmaker in the Middle Tennessee Valley. Just to give you an idea of what to anticipate wind-wise, there will still be hefty gusts as we go through the afternoon and evening here. 50 mile per hour for Tampa, 51 Orlando, 58 in Tallahassee. That can still take down power lines, but it certainly gets weaker. So we are going to see this continue to weaken as it sits over land. The storm surge, however, on the backside as that wind and water whips around, could still reach 10 to even 15 feet in some of those beaches for Captiva or Sanibel, anywhere you see there. And rainfall, don't forget, David, 15 plus inches, 8 in North Georgia possible with those flood watches.
Watching the rain, Ginger, and that storm surge that you speak of at this hour. In the meantime tonight, we turn to Florida's east coast because parts of Miami and Miami Beach are already underwater. The storm surge really on both coasts. This hurricane was wider than the state of Florida. And the images tonight, the construction cranes toppled in this hurricane. ABC's Gio Benitez is live from Miami tonight. Gio?
David, good evening. This is just incredible what's happened here in downtown Miami. You and Ginger just talked about that storm surge. Take a look at this. It has turned roads into rivers here in downtown Miami. This goes for blocks, evidence that a powerful system moved through here. Tonight, massive flooding in downtown Miami, rising water swallowing street signs, this hotel swamped.
Madeline Wright from our Miami affiliate, WPLG, in the middle of the storm surge.
This is a street. This is not a river, but it looks like it.
This car, finding itself in the path of the floodwaters, suddenly forced to back up. The rain relentless for hours, creating blinding conditions.
I don't think I ever would have described a hurricane and sort of compared it to a blizzard. That's what this looks like here.
Gusts approaching 100 miles per hour.
Whoa!
That first crane crashing into a high-rise under construction around 11. Tonight, part of the crane dangling over the side of the building. Late today, a second crane buckling. The powerful winds forcing us inside.
We're going to go inside. I think it's a little too dangerous right now.
Seconds later, those shatter-resistant windows built to sustain a Category 3 hurricane cracking.
And David, as you know, I grew up here in South Florida. I grew up with hurricanes. And when we woke up to that haunting, howling sound of the wind, there's only one other storm I thought of, Hurricane Andrew. David.
So many people have said the same thing, Gio. Our thanks to you all day long as well. And next, all along Irma's path tonight, a trail of destruction. In fact, at this hour, there are already millions without power in this state. And ABC's chief national correspondent, Tom Llamas, is in Fort Myers tonight. Tom?
David, we're feeling the brunt of Hurricane Irma right now. It is relentless. This wind is whipping so hard and the rain doesn't stop. We had a wind gauge, an anemometer. It broke at 80 miles per hour. But what's really breaking is the infrastructure of the power sector here in Florida.
Tonight, Irma's fierce winds toppling trees like matchsticks.
Oh my God!
Those dangerous gusts littering roads, crashing into cars, and snapping power lines. Overnight, flashes in the sky.
Whoa!
The first signs of the widespread power outages to come. More than 2 million Florida customers now without electricity, and federal officials tell ABC News that number could shoot up to 5 million. Utility vehicles are at the ready to turn the lights back on as soon as it's safe, but no telling when that will be. Analysts predict Irma could do $200 billion worth of damage, and we're seeing it already.
You can see the winds. You can see the winds, how powerful they are right now, David. It's going east to west. You can see the top of those palm trees right there and how they're blowing. Irma's coming through here with her full force, and it's getting worse by the minute. David, back to you.
All right, Tom, you and the team stay safe there. They are seeing what we just saw here in Naples as Irma steams northward in this state. We're going to turn to Tampa, which could be next. The next city in the hurricane's path, half of it sitting close to sea level and especially vulnerable to storm surge. Tonight, it's also a city bracing for disaster. ABC's TJ Holmes is there. TJ?
David, vulnerable, yes, also hasn't seen a storm like this since 1921, and they got late notice that this storm was coming for them after it made an unexpected shift over the weekend. All that adds up to high anxiety here in the Tampa Bay area. Tonight, Tampa tested like never before. Its harbor almost like a giant funnel. Irma's winds already sucking water from the coastline, leaving beaches of mud behind. This city hasn't seen a direct hit by a hurricane in almost a century.
We know that we are ground zero for Hurricane Irma. We have for 90 years avoided this day, but I think our day has come.
The Tampa-St. Petersburg area has been called the most vulnerable in the country to flooding damage. Scientists warned for years that a storm like this could mean disaster. Half the people here don't even live 10 feet above sea level. The city will flood at just 3 feet of storm surge, but the storm surge from Irma could more than double, inundating thousands of homes and businesses. Now, they have seen population growth here in this area for the past several years. People want to come here for the beautiful coastline, pristine beaches. Well, 3 million people live in this area now, and they're preparing for the storm of a lifetime. David?
All right, TJ Holmes from Tampa tonight. TJ, thank you. Next here to the life-threatening threat from the storm surge. The water rising in just minutes. Too quick to outrun, to get out of the way. Case in point, right here in Naples a short time ago, the water was already rising 4 feet in just 30 minutes, and now it's the backside of the hurricane. That surge could grow. ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano on the danger, and he's in Sarasota tonight.
Before those waters come rushing in, the ominous images of the negative surge. In Naples, a negative surge of 3.5 feet, likely to become 10 or 15 feet on the other side as Irma moves through. Tonight, so much of Florida coastline vulnerable. the biggest threat to Florida's Gulf Coast, up to 15 feet of surge anticipated. This animation showing how quickly the water can overtake homes, in some cases even moving them off their foundations. But only a few feet of surge can lead to dramatic flooding. Those scenes today in Miami, 5 feet of surge, turning roads into rivers.
Do not think the storm is over when the wind slows down. The storm surge will rush in and could kill you.
And David, that is not a scare tactic between inland flooding and storm surge. Water is the #1 hurricane-related killer. In the end, look, you can protect yourself from the wind like we're doing. Look at it outside, but you have to move away from the water. Both of those things won't be at their peak here in Sarasota for another 5 or 6 hours, David.
It's so important to take the surge seriously, Robert, thanks to you. And also, don't fall for that lull after the storm hits, because we are actually seeing this pick up as we're on the air tonight. Our thanks to you, Rob, and the entire team in the hurricane zone. And there's still much more ahead on this special edition of World News Tonight Sunday. Irma's first landfall on the fragile Florida Keys. The new images coming in right now, the stories just starting to emerge from those who stayed behind and survived. And of course, this storm is still on the move at this hour. We will check back in on the new track tonight. Who gets it next? And it's not just Florida. We're back in a moment. High water and high winds in historic Florida Keys. Irma's first landfall, tales of survival from an American landmark region, no stranger to terrible storms. Here tonight, ABC's Amy Robach, also in South Florida. Amy?
Tonight, devastation in Key West after a direct hit from Hurricane Irma. Water swallowing streets. Overnight, power lines sparking. Many who stayed behind, like Zach Zilkakis, now in the dark.
We're not sure what's out there. We're not sure what we're going to see when we open the door.
That wind like a freight train.
You can hear it. This is through concrete buildings, through shutters and through the door, and that wind's blowing.
He's huddling with friends and family on the 3rd floor of a condo.
Our fear was storm surge, so life jackets, generator. We boarded up. We have a radio. We have, a total of 20 cases of water.
Up in Key Largo, David Kay hunkered down, documenting Irma's wrath.
We're doing all right. We're survived.
Water starting to flood outside his home. A few hours later, that property underwater.
Residents are being told to boil water in the area in case that water system has been compromised. And crews will be getting out there to assess the damage as soon as the roads become passable. But in the meantime, they are telling residents they will not be getting home anytime soon. Parts of the Keys are still underwater tonight, David.
All right, Amy Robach, who's been on the air with us all day, and we're thinking about everyone there in the Florida Keys as well. Thank you, Amy. When we come back tonight, it's really picking up here, and the thousands hunkering down together, sharing shelter from the storm. Their incredible stories also emerging. And, of course, the new track, the path of Hurricane Irma, still on the move at this hour, where this storm is headed next. As you can imagine, the shelters here in Florida are overflowing. So many residents who thought they were heading for safety here in the western part of the state suddenly finding themselves squarely in the storm's path. Here's ABC's Victor Akendo tonight.
Across Florida tonight, from high school gyms to hockey arenas, families hunkering down to wait out this storm. More than 500 shelters open, more than 116,000 people now calling them home. Here in Naples, Julie Buffano, her daughter, and 6-week-old granddaughter got to this community center in the nick of time.
Pandemonium. We were very nervous, very scared.
This morning, when the power went out, people watching through the window. About an hour later, the shelter door cracking. National Guard troops taping up the glass.
They actually just cleared out this whole area. This room was packed with people just in awe, watching the winds just pick up.
Now, with the winds kicking up, nearly 400 people in this shelter alone, and that's not all. Ray Kretz takes us into a storage room, 120 pets in crates.
Good girl.
Including his own golden retriever, Farley.
And now the police tape is up. People are being kept away from these windows. Irma continues to pound Florida, but tonight shelters are still opening up. David?
Victor Akendo, thanks for thinking about all those families who now have to return home after Irma to see if their homes are still intact and their possessions untouched. Let's hope so. And when we come back here tonight, the new details emerging about the track of Hurricane Irma, the latest path.
Before I had the shooting burning
pins and needles of diabetic nerve pain. These feet grew into a
We're back now with a darkened sky again here in Naples, the city among so many coastal communities taking a battering from this incredible hurricane. Let's get back to Ginger Z. She's got the latest track as we head into this evening. Hey, Ginger.
Hey, David. From Fort Myers to the Treasure Coast across the state of Florida, hurricane-force gusts being felt on satellite is 450 miles across, raining almost everywhere in the state. Tornado watch that's in place all the way through Brunswick, Georgia. And let me take you through that track. It hugs the coast, becomes a 1 overnight in Tampa, still very strong, still could take down power lines and trees, and then a tropical storm as it reaches Georgia. A lot of rain could come with this. Flood watches for up to 8, even 15 inches of rain. David.
Ginger, thanks so much. You've been on the air all day long with us. Thanks for joining us here at home. ABC News, of course, continuing with live coverage on hurricane.
Americans choose ABC News.
Tonight, Hurricane Irma monster storm, a special edition of 2020.
This is the thick of it right now.
We're live inside the danger zone.
Whoa!
Incredible video just coming in as Irma slams into Naples. My 2020 co-anchor David Muir taking a direct hit.
The sheets of rain coming off these buildings.
Our ABC News team tethered down and reporting from every point along the way.
I'm going to come in.
Storm chasers risking everything, not running away.
Wow! Oh my gosh, it's surging in here.
But racing in through a solid wall of water and wind. The destruction Irma has already left behind in the Keys. And where she's headed next. There's no turning back now. Hurricane Irma, monster storm, a special edition of 2020.
And good evening. I'm Elizabeth Vargas, joined here by George Stephanopoulos. We've been covering this historic monster storm all day long from daybreak, from the moment Hurricane Irma hit the Florida Keys earlier today.
And we have seen the sheer unrelenting force of Hurricane Irma. It made landfall in the Keys as a Category 4 this morning. Again this afternoon on Marco Island as a Category 3. Then in Naples as a Category 3 as well. Tampa now bracing for impact. The worst may be still to come. And Elizabeth, as we saw the pictures come in, we saw Irma envelop that whole state of Florida after causing so much destruction in the Caribbean. You heard the awe, urgency, and fear in people's voices. Look at those pictures right now in Fort Myers, Florida. That is where the storm is hitting so hard. We're going to go to our correspondent there in just a minute. There have been at least 3 deaths in Florida, more than 2 million without power. Miami spared a direct hit. You wouldn't know it from the pictures in the streets. Water knee-deep in downtown already. Those waters expected to rise up to 5 feet above the ground at high tide. And the hurricane spawned tornadoes across the state. One hit the Fort Lauderdale International Airport. More warnings continue to pop up across the state. Elizabeth, states of emergency declared not only in Florida, also Georgia, Alabama, and South Carolina.
And our correspondents are on the ground in the track of the hurricane from Miami on the East Coast, wrapping all the way up Florida on the West Coast, where Irma is about to hit Tampa, the Tampa area. We were with our correspondents earlier today live when Naples and Fort Myers. But right now we're going to go to my 2020 co-anchor David Muir in Naples, where Irma really did hit hard earlier today. David.
Elizabeth and George, we witnessed something stunning here today. The muscle, the strength of Hurricane Irma, and we knew it was coming. You know, all weekend long here in Florida, you have to imagine they were initially prepared. The cone has been wide for several days, but they were initially prepared for a track that would take it up the east coast of Florida. And then much of the state woke up Saturday morning to a westward track. That set in motion so many people trying to evacuate these western cities up along the coast. And then it all played out here this afternoon. The first reports of winds of 130 miles per hour at Marco Island. That was not far from here. And then we knew Naples was next on that path. And before we knew it, it was right over us. Reports of the highest wind gusts recorded yet in Florida from Irma. It was 142 miles per hour nearby at the Naples airport. We were all here on the air. Pieces of the roof were starting to tear off, debris in the air. And we were on the air with several of our correspondents before the entire team here then took shelter in a stairwell. Take a look at what we witnessed. If hurricanes are living things, this is Irma's oxygen. At 4 p.m., Irma makes her second landfall, hitting Marco Island and then Naples, creating near whiteout conditions, pummeling the coast with punishing winds and torrential rains. And already severe flooding outside Fort Myers.
The bad news is that this is some big monster, but I think we're very well coordinated. You don't want to be in that path. That's a path you don't want to be in.
Wind gusts reaching over 100 miles an hour, strong enough to knock down not just thin trees, but also blow out this office window and topple a concrete sign.
Oh my God!
Our ABC team forced to seek shelter when the roof tiles from the building and the debris came flying through the air. And I'm just going to show you what we've done down here. Because as we were on the air, you can actually hear some of this debris coming in. But these windows come around the corner here, Tom. This is what happens when these buildings, and just be careful, Tom, the awnings on the outside of the building actually are crashing down, breaking these windows inside the hotel. With power transformers being knocked out,
Whoa!
Thousands of evacuees hunkered in area shelters, but the storm gives no quarter. here battering the glass doors of this Naples shelter. Earlier, at another Florida shelter, we met toughened hurricane survivors like John Tisdale.
Andrew flattened everything in his path. You know, just toppled houses, knocked the roof off the houses.
So you're not taking any chances?
I'm not taking, no. I'm 70 years old. I can't take any chances right now.
You're going to be okay.
I'm peaking at the end of my lifetime.
We're glad you're here at the shelter.
Okay, I appreciate it.
When Irma made its first U.S. landfall in the Keys around 9 this morning, all expectations were shattered. More water moving with more force. The streets of Key Largo resembling the canals of Venice. Watch as this storm chaser in the Keys struggles to keep his feet as he tries to clock how fast the winds are, clocking gusts as high as 117 miles per hour. This evening in Naples, after a respite from Irma's fury as her eye passes over.
This is not bad. It was, 20 minutes ago. You couldn't even see the parking lot.
I can't believe you guys were here.
The brutal bands of the back wall bringing another round of nature's wrath. It won't be until after sunrise when we can witness the full devastation left in Irma's wake. We can't go out throughout Naples yet, obviously, because of fears over that storm surge. It rose 4 feet in the first 30 minutes. They expect it to go even higher here. So, again, we won't be able to assess anything here until tomorrow morning. I remember that year of Katrina, Rita, and Wilma being in every one of those hurricanes. And in Katrina, we were in the Superdome as the storm hit, the top peeling off. And so we can only imagine what it was like to be in the shelters here in Naples as that hurricane hit at 142 miles an hour, and those stories have yet to emerge as well. We do know the path of this storm is now headed northward, Fort Myers, Tampa in its sights next. But let's go right to ABC's Tom Yamas, where it is hitting hard right now. Tom, what are you seeing?
David, Hurricane Irma is shredding Fort Myers at this hour. Just behind me, there was a stop sign. It was a metal stop sign. It was embedded in concrete. It's just been ripped out of the post, and it went flying behind me. Over here, you can see it's a whiteout. It's very tough to see right here, but you can see the line of the hurricane winds. It's an east to west wind. It is shredding those palm trees at this hour. David, I don't have a radar in front of me, but I don't need one. Hurricane Irma is right over us right now. We are a little more inland. We're a little bit more protected, and we're a little concerned because there's a marina across from us right now, and I'm a little concerned about the projectiles, so we're going to move back inside. But at this hour, Fort Myers is getting absolutely ripped apart. There's a curfew in effect at 8 o'clock. It doesn't matter. You can't be in the streets right now. David, back to you.
I want to ask you a quick question, Tom, before you head inside to safety, just about the storm surge there in Fort Myers. They were predicting anywhere between 10 and 15 feet here. What were they predicting there? And obviously you haven't had a chance to know whether that's going to happen. It usually doesn't happen until the backside of the hurricane is done.
Well, the estimate was similar to Naples. I think it was a little less than Naples. We're about 10 feet above sea level right now. So far, there's no type of storm surge, no type of flooding at this hour. But David, as you know, the storm surge comes later.
Okay, Tom Yamas, our thanks to you and the team. Please be safe, get to a shelter. In the meantime, let's go to ABC's Matt Gutman, who was right here in Naples as this storm came over us. And Matt, I've got to say, we've heard from the meteorologists on our team, Ginger and Rob, and they have told us when the hurricane comes through, there's then that lull that comes afterward when you're literally in the eye. And we saw that here. Everything calmed down. The wind stopped. The rain stopped. And we had about 20, 30 minutes before it darkened, and now the winds have really picked up and the bands of rain all over again on the backside of this hurricane.
That's right. I mean, and the major concern, of course, as you and Tom just spoke about, is that storm surge. All that wind was going offshore for the first few hours of that storm. We were being pounded by it. Now it's being sucked back in. And most of the outlying areas just to the west of us are in major flooding threat. And we've heard emergency officials talk about the speed with which that water can rise. Feet within minutes, that is the major concern now. And that lull, being in the eye of the storm, it wasn't sunny out, but suddenly it brightened. There were people walking their dogs across the street. Folks in boots and shorts coming to check on their cars. Somebody got a drone up in the air. I'm not sure if you actually saw that, but it was this incredible lull, and that is exactly what officials are most concerned about. We also saw people driving in the streets. The people think that the storm is over. It's time to go assess the damage. False. That is the worst time to go out. There is much more of this storm coming, as we saw the brunt of it getting hit by this mallet of wind, powerful enough to knock a grown man off his feet. The wind so powerful, it felt like staring right into a fire hose. more of that to come. And again, David and Ginger and everybody have been talking about this. The geographical breadth of this storm is just terrifying, David.
Just unbelievable. Wider than the state of Florida itself. We saw storm surge on both the East Coast and the West Coast. But I've got to ask you, Matt, I talked to the mayor here in Naples today, Mayor Barnett, who said he was proud of the people here of Naples because so many heeded those warnings. I know you spoke of a few who came out during the lull, which authorities say do not do because of the surge that's coming. But for the most part, he did a decent job, authorities here, in getting people out, especially when that track changed so late. Saturday morning, the weekend was already underway.
There's a point at which it is up to the citizens themselves to protect themselves, because at 45 miles per hour, it is pretty much a standard across the country. Emergency personnel do not go out because they can get themselves into trouble, and that doesn't help anybody out. And so I just heard from the mayor's office a little while ago, there were no injuries reported so far. That is very good news here. There obviously is damage pretty much everywhere you look, but that is just property. As everybody from the governor on down with whom you spoke, that can be replaced. Human lives cannot be. So at least here in Collier County, I think there's a sigh of relief, at least so far, as long as people don't go out and start surveying the damage and trying to see that storm surge coming up. David.
But that is reassuring news. No reports of any injuries or deaths so far, at least in this region. But we know Irma's path is not over. Fort Myers and Tampa next. And Elizabeth and George, I got to tell you, the governor, Rick Scott, told me today that his biggest fear is the storm surge as we wait the full effects here in Naples and in Fort Myers. Tampa is where they're really concerned simply because of the population there.
Absolutely. It's a low-lying city, David, and they've been giving warnings. The National Weather Service today has said sternly several times, do not go near the water. We are very concerned about that storm surge. People will be lulled into a false sense of security with the sun out and the storm, the winds subsiding. And it's really important not to go near the water. The Hurricane Irma first hit U.S. landfall early this morning in the Florida Keys. And just a few moments ago, there was an announcement there's an airborne relief mission down to the Florida Keys to give folks there, many of whom are underwater, some of whom hunkered it out and tried to get through that storm on their own. We're going to go down now to Gio Benitez, who, as we just said, the Keys were the first part of Florida to get hit. And soon after, Miami felt the storm's backlash. Miami is now also flooding, as the Keys reportedly are. Tell us what the conditions are where you are, Gio. Pretty deep?
You know what, Elizabeth? It's pretty unbelievable that we are still seeing this rain and this wind. You talked about that flooding. We've been seeing that across downtown Miami. We were just down there and we saw that the wind is picking up here just again. We saw that it was just totally covering up these fire hydrants. Now, I want to show you this because this scene has totally changed since we first saw this morning. I want you to look at these buildings behind me. You see that over there? They have lost all of these windows all along that. That is a skyscraper here in Miami. We saw that during Hurricane Andrew. Now here at the height of it, when we were first on this, we got some winds of some 100 miles per hour earlier today, and we actually had to be tethered here. But even so, it was too dangerous. We had to go inside. Moments after we went inside, let me show you this. Look at this right here, okay? You see this? That's how powerful these storms were. These windows just totally cracked here. The good news is they are impact-resistant windows, and that is why we chose this particular location, that it was built for a hurricane, Elizabeth.
And Gio, it's important to note that Miami wasn't even in the crosshairs of Hurricane Irma, and yet still is experiencing quite a bit of damage, quite a bit of flooding. Are you seeing any signs of this storm surge down there, even where it's been warned would happen further up north on the west coast of Florida?
That's right. I mean, that's what's so incredible. The eye of the storm at the height of it all was 100 miles from Miami, and we were feeling those incredible, intense winds and rain. And that storm surge, that's what caused this flooding that we're seeing now in downtown Miami, that we were not expecting to see that much. But we saw it, and it's still there, and it's probably going to be there for quite some time.
All right, Gio Benitez, thanks so much.
You were seeing those palm trees swaying in Miami from before 6 this morning. Amy Robach was there all morning long. And Amy, those winds so powerful, even though, as we've said, this was the outer bands of the Hurricane Irma, and we even saw those construction cranes swaying in the wind, some breaking.
Yes, 2 of those cranes actually fell down, even though we knew authorities promised us that wouldn't happen, that they would spin like helicopters and be all right. 2 of those cranes did come crashing down. The good news is people were not in the area. No one was injured because of that, but fire crews are going to have to get out and assess how they then repair that damage without causing any other problems. And, you know, the stunning thing about this storm, George, you mentioned we were out here at 6 a.m. We had winds whipping. This was almost a 24-hour event for people in Miami because the rain and the wind started yesterday, last night, and then we had for a good 6 hours hurricane force winds, incredible howling wind, and then the stunning view, which was almost a whiteout. I've never quite seen anything like it. There was so much rain being whipped up and so much storm surge being blown up from the ground because of the flooding that was happening in downtown Miami. It literally looked like a hurricane blizzard. It was really incredible to witness and to hear and to see. And then, unfortunately, people ventured out when they shouldn't have. And we actually caught a pretty unfortunate and stunning show of this man trying to get through the floodwaters at the height of the storm when the winds were whipping, and it was everything you shouldn't do because we know those storm surges can come up suddenly. We got about a 5-foot storm surge here in downtown Miami, but people are still coming out now, and I don't know if you can hear the winds behind me, but they're still howling, they're still roaring, and we are seeing people try to drive through these floodwaters and walk through, some of them smartly back up. But the smartest thing you could do is to stay put, guys.
Well, I remember that moment with Amy. She wanted to scream at that person on the street as she saw him out.
Get off the street. Yeah, absolutely. Amy, thank you so much. And she's talking about the storm surge, 5 feet already in Miami. Ginger Z, our chief meteorologist, is here. There's already been a 7-foot storm surge reported in Naples and rising, and that was in just 90 minutes. Right. How dramatic is that?
It's now up to 8 feet. That's how dramatic that it keeps rising. And so that backside of the storm, a couple of people have already mentioned it. You'll get that counterclockwise rotation. And even after the worst of the winds go, some of the worst of the waves and the water will come. So let me take you to the storm because it's important to see this update. We just got one. Still 110-mile-per-hour max sustained winds. It's moving north at 14. The eye of Irma is over Lee County in Florida. So you can see Fort Myers was certainly didn't need, like Tom said, he didn't need a radar to know that. The tornado watch and warnings extend all the way north into Brunswick, Georgia, include Jacksonville. And just to give you an idea, guys, the 70-mile-per-hour winds was just gusted and recorded in Key West. So 10 hours after it made landfall there.
Still getting gusts like that.
That's how